As the church is moving from the inside out and expanding into cyberspace and online, experimenting with online church and so forth, some questions and issues are raised with that. And so our next presenter, Sarah Grady, has been looking at some of those questions in her research. So turn it over to you, Sarah.
So I'd like to start today with a show of hands. How many of you have already been online at some point today, or maybe you're online right now? We live in a networked world. This includes checking emails, we read the news, we browse our favorite websites, or maybe you've looked up some directions on how to get here today on Google Maps. We live in an age where technology is so prevalent, we seem shocked when someone tells us, I don't own a cell phone. It seems like they've told us they didn't know the world was round. Online is where the majority of people in our Western culture spend their waking hours. And the same way the advent of the printing press changed the way that people have been able to access information, so has the internet. Never before has information been so readily available as it is in this day and age, and I know this because I Googled it. This is a familiar sight to many, I'm sure. I mean, this is where we go to when we have questions that we need answers for right away. In my first year of study here at AST, my classmates in their final year were looking at job postings, and they were wanting some help with where should I go and what should I be looking for. And I must admit that when helping them, my first instinct was to go to Google and look up the churches and see if they had a website, see what they were all about. Well, what I found was curious, and in some cases a little disturbing. Websites labeled under construction that had been that way for a year or more. Ones with cheesy graphic images and grainy photos that didn't really do much to inspire me to want to be part of that congregation. And perhaps worst of all, flashy colors. And theology that I wasn't quite sure about. This is sort of like a Norton virus warning at the top that says, you are possibly not secure in your own personal faith. Trust in God solely through His Son Jesus for the forgiveness of all your sins and the free gift of eternal life. Click here. Kind of hurts the eyes a little bit, doesn't it? I won't subject you to it anymore. That summer, as I was doing work for a United Church program, I was tasked with calling around to various churches to confirm their registration for the program and to see if they needed any funding. And once again, my automatic go-to, if I didn't have the name of a contact person or I wanted to know if they specifically had a youth minister, Google, see if they had a website, if I could find out some more information. And I continued to see the same trend: out-of-date or non-existent websites. I'm surprised, and I was surprised in this day and age by that fact. I felt like I didn't know what I was seeing, but something was staying with me, and I had a nagging feeling that these congregations who didn't have a website, or ones that were maybe poorly done or weren't reflecting their best selves, were missing out on an opportunity to connect with people. Matthew says, quoting Jesus, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven." I started to wonder, was it possible that these congregations had lost some of their saltiness? Were they missing an opportunity to let their light shine and to show their good works? Were they missing an opportunity to invite others to share in the joy of community? These experiences are what have led me to my research. I wanted to know, how do clergy and congregations use and understand their websites? What did they see as the purpose for having one? And perhaps most importantly of all, did they see a website as a modern-day tool for evangelism? To answer some of these questions, I interviewed 4 people, and I used a grounded theory method. And this method was really great because it allowed me to develop a hypothesis based on what those participants I interviewed had to say, rather than me trying to prove a hypothesis myself. It was also a helpful way to do my research because, quite frankly, there is not a lot available research on web ministry. So I interviewed 4 participants, and I will introduce you to my participants. I've used names that are associated with either the internet or technology. Cheryl is a quarter-time web minister for a United Church, and I've chosen Cheryl because Sheryl Sandberg is the COO of Facebook. Steve is Steve Jobs. I think we can all know why I've named Steve Jobs. And Steve is a full-time creative media arts director for a Baptist congregation. Meg is a full-time United Church minister, and Meg Whitman is the CEO of Hewlett-Packard. And Bill Gates, is a full-time Anglican priest. Each of these participants has had experience in either the creation or upkeep of their congregational website. And through a series of questions and answers, these participants offered some wonderful insights into the possibilities as well as some of the limitations of the church online. As I started to code, Rachel, thank you for showing how we code this morning. It was a wonderful illustration. As I started to code and look through my research, there were some themes that emerged for me. The first one was welcome. How can a website be the new front door of our church? Evangelism, a new medium for the message. Community in action. How does your website say who is the church? Connecting, meeting people where they are. And a 5th underlying theme that came out was this notion of untapped resources. Matthew 25:35 says, "I was a stranger and you welcomed me." When we welcome Christ, he never comes alone. He always brings friends. We also welcome the hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, and yes, sometimes the strange. The radical hospitality that Christ has invited us to be a partner in calls us to seek new opportunities to welcome the friend as well as the stranger. In our 7-day society, church is not the only option on a Sunday morning, something that many of us in our Christian churches are lamenting and wondering, how can we draw people back in to Sunday morning? And because of this question, many congregations are seeking out those new ways to reach out and connect to the people who are no longer coming through the physical front doors of our buildings. My research has led me to see the possibility of a church website as that new front door. And I asked each of my participants to comment on the ways that they were using their website as a tool to reach out to those exploring. What are the ways that they felt their website was a place of welcome? Well, Bill said, I think it's important that what's on there is the worship schedule and the location of the church. And the who we are is important, and what kind of parish we are. My hope is that people would also take a look at the ministry page. And it's a point of contact. Cheryl is a web designer by trade, and she does her congregation's website, and she talked about the importance of making sure that the layout of a website was a way to welcome people. She said, I'm told that people can find what they're looking for easily on our website. When I learned web development, that's the number one thing people would be frustrated about. If they go to a website and the navigation is not clear, it's very easy to navigate our website. Steve also expanded on this point. He's also a designer of websites, and he talked about the things he kept in mind when he was designing the layout of his congregation's website. He said, I wanted to make sure that it's easy to find anything, that you can find things in 3 clicks or less, and I really appreciated the Trinitarian 3 clicks. I don't want stale data up there because that's a turnoff for people. From my opinion, because you're asking, I think that it's the same as any website, not necessarily just a church website. It should be able to tell you immediately what it's all about. I thought about that, and I think when you go to a building, if you go to a church and the front door is locked, or you walk in the building and you can't find anybody and it's not easy to locate who you're looking for, this is the same. Online is the same. We are working in the same, just a new medium. But it was Meg who really talked about the church as the new front door. She said, it's the door. It really is the door of our church. It is more important than any other thing that we do. Every single new family, every single new parent that we've had come and check out baptism or join the community have Googled us, have searched through the website of churches. And I always ask, how did you find us? And they always answer, through your website. It's the front door that says who we are and what we believe. Meg also talked about what she thinks makes her congregational website a place of welcome, and she said, our website is very colorful, and I always think that that's immediately engaging. The other helpful thing is that I think it's intuitive and it's easy. Again, like a building that you can't find a door into, if a website is not intuitive or easy, are you going to feel welcomed into that online space? The next theme that came out was evangelism and a new medium for the message. Some of you may recognize the name Marshall McLuhan. He was a 20th century communications theorist and educator who referred famously to the medium as the message. McLuhan held that media shapes the way that we think and that the printed word was fated to disappear. He predicted the advent of the internet 30 years before the public knew anything about it. Evangelism is a word we don't like to use very much these days. To those people who are not churchgoers and aren't familiar with its true meaning, it often conjures up that image of the sweaty preacher in his best Sunday suit prophesying and healing the masses on TV. But, as a past AST Grad project presenter pointed out, evangelism does not need to be a dirty word. Simply put, it means to share the gospel of Christ. The Gospel of Matthew says, Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. This is our task as those called to ministry, as those called to leadership in God's church, and it's not any easy task. The theologian Shane Hipps draws on the work of Marshall McLuhan in his book, The Hidden Power of Electronic Culture. And Hipps says that our methods for communicating God's message have undergone this series of seismic shifts. That because the medium is the message, our media revolutions from the printing press to the internet have led to unintended changes in our message. But this is not something that we need to fear. Nor should we shy away from the possibilities of evangelism in times of change and using a new medium for the message, because long before McLuhan said it, Jesus said the medium is the message. Jesus said, no one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old cloak, for the patch pulls away from the cloak and a worse tear is made. Neither is new wine put into old wineskins, otherwise the skins burst and the wine is spilled and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins so that both are preserved. Our modern day society has shifted us into this new reality, where emails have replaced handwritten letters and text messaging has replaced phone calls. Social networks like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram have replaced the need, or the want in some cases, for face-to-face interaction. So how is God's church responding? How are we changing the medium so that people are still hearing the message? On her congregation's website, Cheryl posts podcasts and hard copies of the minister's sermon, and she found that people would leave messages saying, I found your website, I have a troubled life, and it was your pastor's sermons that helped me. I found them very uplifting. Bill said, I definitely see a future in evangelism online. As far as the website, for me, the goal was to put the information up there that would hopefully draw people in. Meg proclaimed, it is absolutely a tool of evangelism. It is the tool of evangelism next to word of mouth in this day and age. And I think the piece about evangelism is saying, well, here we are, we believe in God, this is how we practice our faith, and this is what you will find when you come on Sunday morning. Steve made the profound message, it's on the web, so it is potentially worldwide. Steve also talked about posting their weekly messages online. He said, we post our weekly messages online, so there's an evangelism tool right there. When I asked Steve for a further explanation what non-Christians or persons exploring the gospel might be on his website or were already offered, he said, the way you deliver your message can change constantly just to be current or relevant to the culture. But the message itself doesn't change. We don't water that down. We just don't. This is what we believe. How we present it may change, but not what we believe. I want people to see it right up front. I want the website to say it's all about Jesus. I want it to reach people and for it to say we care. It's important to God and it's important to us, and here's what we are doing with our community. Steve's comments lead us nicely into our third theme, which is community in action. Who is the church? We've been talking so far about the possibilities of reaching out and welcoming and engaging newcomers, but another very important theme that emerged through my research was the need to excite and enliven the ministries of people who are already engaged in the life and work of a congregation. Each of the participants said that showing who the church is and the things that they do is an important aspect of that website for them. The things that are important to them were having pictures of church suppers or the children's time or men's and women's ministries or maybe some mission work that they'd been engaged in. Through the research, it showed that this had a twofold effect. It was a way to affirm the gifts being shared by people in the community, but it also gave an opportunity for newcomers or members in the congregation seeking a new ministry to take part in to see the community in action and understand better what it's all about. Cheryl talked about how her ministry included trying to post things like the Christmas pageant with the kids in their costumes because she just thought they were so cute. Or pictures and write-ups when there's a guest preacher. When I asked if she had any specific intention in mind when choosing pictures to go on the site, she said, just the activities and the things that happen, what the people are doing and what the people are contributing. And that's what it's all about. That's what we want people to see. Bill said it's not just the pictures that show the life and work of the community. We have a parish newsletter, and it's also you can download it. I'll also include a page about what's happening in the national church right on the homepage. He went on to talk about the links to their bishop's website, as well as links to the Worldwide Anglican Communion. It became clear from all of the participants that links to other relevant sites, mission statements, and core beliefs were important ways of highlighting who the church is. Not just their church, but their denomination. Meg brought up an interesting point about pictures on a website in her interview. When I asked her whether she felt that showing pictures of the life and work of the congregation were an important aspect of the site, she said, absolutely. I mean, if you just have empty pews, what does that say? I always think, what does it mean when people put up pictures of an empty building on their website? I think if you've got stuff up there, it should be with people in it. The more I reflected on the data from my interview, the more apparent it became to me. Pictures and links and statements about who we are and what we believe on a website and what's happening in the national church or initiatives of a congregation, these are tools that help to reinforce that the church is not a building. The church is the people of God at work and at play and in worship as a community of faith. As each of my participants pointed out in one way or another, and as we noticed from our show of hands at the beginning of the presentation, people are online all day long. If a congregation does not have a presence there, it is a missed opportunity to connect with people, both new people and people who are already members of the congregation. We talk a lot in church about meeting people where they are. Well, the place that people are is online. They are on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram, on Pinterest, and countless other blogs and websites. Each participant noticed that on their website, they offered links to some of those social media outlets, Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. I mean, social media has exploded in the last 10 years, and as I've already mentioned, has really changed the way that we interact with one another. The very definition of the word social means time spent connecting, and media the various communication channels that we use to connect. We have the tools available to us to meet people where they are. I mean, if Philip in the book of Acts can use ditch water to baptize a eunuch on the road, why can't we use Facebook or Instagram to connect with people outside of Sunday morning worship? Marshall McLuhan said, "Today, after more than a century of electronic technology, we have extended our central nervous system into a global embrace, abolishing both space and time as far as our planet is concerned." He was talking about how we have made the world a smaller place, and his work coined the phrase global village because he thought that's the way it works in a small village. That's the way it used to work. Information spread like that in a small village. Cheryl talked about social media when she said, "We also use a lot of social media. We're on Facebook and Twitter, and we're getting more of an audience through social media than by any other means. I find articles and inspirational things, and I post them on there. But really, people are not going to notice your online content unless you are on social media." Steve said, "You can't please everybody. That's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to be people pleasers, but we are trying to be relevant and stay with where people are and connect with people where they are." Bill said the other big part of his ministry is Facebook. He has a closed Facebook group for his youth group. He said it's a place where youth are really able to open up and be themselves, that Facebook is a great way to start conversations online, and that is really where he sees a lot of conversations actually happening. Meg shared a funny story about a few years back when some evangelical atheists had found her congregation's website. And so they started sending her emails. And at first, they were conversations politely asking about her sermons that she had posted or the theology of the United Church of Canada. But in the end, they simply wanted to fight with her about the fact that God did not exist. Now, Meg's interaction with these people certainly wasn't positive in the end, nor was it a permanent connection, but it was a connection. It was a possibility of leading to something more far away. The final theme that arose as I was interviewing my participants was this notion of untapped resources. And when you create a website and your church goes online, you open up the possibility to other online opportunities and technologies. We've already noted that social media is one of those avenues, but both Meg and Bill talked about their experience of using Skype as a tool for connecting with people. For Meg, it was when she was leading a Bible study and a person who was in a wheelchair was not able to attend those sessions, and they tried at first using a conference call method, and he just didn't feel the same connection. And then they used Skype, and he was able to see what was happening in the room and feel more connected and be a part of the conversation, even though he couldn't physically be in that room. Bill also shared a similar experience, but for him it was a baptism. Somebody who was unable to attend and witness the baptism of a family member. They were Skyped in, and they were able to share in that holy moment, in that connection, through a series of wires and satellites. My research has shown me some wonderful possibilities for the church online. To share a personal experience, 3 weeks ago I was interviewed for a job, and I got to the interview. I'd preached in the morning in my home congregation in Toronto, and I got to the interview about an hour outside of Toronto, and the first thing they said to me was, "We heard your sermon." I said, "Oh, I didn't see you in church this morning." They said, "Oh, we Googled your website, and we found that your sermon had been posted online." Within 2 hours of finishing preaching the Word of God to the people in the pews, people an hour away were able to hear that same word and critique me on it and let me know if they wanted to be part of their congregation. But isn't that what we're always doing? Brian McLaren said, "Balanced minds cannot live on websites and chat rooms alone." As each of my participants noted, while there are many positive aspects of a church website and the church online, there are also limitations. Meg talked about this when she said the whole reason for coming to church is the experience of worship. The experience is that you were there and you were listening to the word and you were singing and you were engaged. It's the visual and tactile experience of being there. While talking about recording an entire service, Cheryl noted that an entire church service on a podcast is kind of boring. You can hear people coughing and paper shuffling, and it's just not the same as being there in person. A website and the technologies that we have available to us are just like any other tool that we use, whether that's preaching the Word of God or offering music and worship. If they're not done well, people don't connect with them. Bill noted that congregations need to take ownership of the upkeep and creation of their online presence in order for it to be good and continue to connect with people. This task has fallen to him, but he's a full-time priest in a busy parish. It's yet another limitation that people often find about online presence, is finding someone who's capable and willing to do those things in order for them to be done well. But we need to have that presence. We need it because it's available to us. It's a tool that's available right now and that people are using, millions of people all over the world. In the words of wisdom that Steve offered, even on Sunday morning, people have the world in their hand. So you better be more engaging than Wikipedia and Google and everything else that's out there. It's our job to make it relevant and captivating and engaging. It's my prayer that this research will show the need for a good, well-done church website as an extension of ministry. Not the only way we want to do ministry in this day and age, but an extension. It's a way in and a point of contact. It's the invitation to the party, not the party. The party begins when you are able to enter that front door and be part of something bigger. Amen.
So many rich ideas presented and all of that. You know, I John Roberta, Catholic educators, we need to be curators for faith formation, and that's part of our role in the ministry. And you know, my generation is Pinterest, and if you go on there and you search spirituality or Christianity, you just get all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Not all great, but you get a lot.
Volume is not a problem.
My own denomination just approved online communion. I'm not quite sure how that works, but
That did come up in my conversation.
and one of your participants, as I understand it, was a full-time, that was his full-time job.
His full-time job is website, upkeep of web, but also anything else to do with technologies, creative media arts director.
Questions for Sarah?
Great job, Oliver. Really interesting. I have more questions. I'm just thinking which one I want to ask first. I was wondering if they talked about any of the challenges I know that some of these people have experienced, especially for rural congregations, and
can develop websites. So I know, for example, the rural parish, which, I always talk about, one that I grew up in Southern Labrador, for those who don't know. There's no one who could create a website and keep it up. So those circumstances in which I really wish that people could connect and learn about it, but at the same time, there's no one really to provide that resource, because I think it would be great.
Mm-hmm. So you want me to, so I can talk a bit about, so one of the participants, he's got a 5-point rural charge, essentially. So you talked about one of the limitations there being nobody to take on the website, so he's doing it himself. And there's some limitation there because there's 5 different points of a charge. I mean, they all have different names, right? So some of the limitation there was making sure that everybody is represented fairly on one page. That's some of the issue there. Some of the conversations that I had surrounding that were about how it doesn't have to mean online means it doesn't have to be somebody in your congregation helping you with that. And there was some talk with one of my participants about what is the national church? What are the resources and tools that they can help out with those congregations who might not have somebody as part of their parish to help and be capable of doing that ministry? I noticed after all of this, I wish I'd interviewed somebody from the Presbyterian Church, because it looks as though, and maybe Lawrence, you might know, the Presbyterian Church looks like they have a template that they use. All the websites look the same, and they follow the same format, and so I thought that was interesting and wondered if it was an initiative of the national church to help people out, because that is a question. I mean, it doesn't cost a lot. I think one of them noted that their cost per year for everything all told was $400, and that was using like really expensive stuff. It can be done cheaply, but yeah, it can be an issue finding people to do that.
Then I'll ask, this will be the last question, and I'll let someone else ask one. I was wondering if there was any discussion about, like you showed some of the websites with interesting theology, as well, when you let other people work the website, whether that be lay personnel within the church. Is there, I don't know if there's policy or caution around that, just in case, what are you putting out there?
Absolutely, with anything, with anything that we say or do in the church, especially, as I've pointed out, if it's on the web, it's potentially worldwide. You want to be careful what you're putting out there, because you want to be careful what you'll get back. But, I mean, if you're careful about what you're putting out there, it can be amazing what you get back. But if you don't, you're not going to get anything.
I was just wondering about privacy issues, posting pictures of your church service or your youth group or whatever. Mm-hmm. Do people do things like get permission from family members to do that?
Absolutely. Every single participant who posted pictures, all consent forms were filled out, and especially for little children. Parents would sign that, and yeah, every single participant noted that. Yeah.
You mentioned a couple things about not having a website as like a missed opportunity. Mm-hmm. I think you could go one step farther and say without a website, you are invisible, right? Especially those rural pastoral churches that are, very far off the beaten path, that people aren't generally going to drive by and say, I wonder if they have a website, Somebody might move to an area and say, okay, I'm going to Google churches around here. But if you don't have a website, you are invisible. And so I think that's something else. You mentioned also online versus word of mouth when it comes to evangelism. I think nowadays online has surpassed word of mouth when it comes to evangelism, at least when it comes to spreading the word about this particular community or that community, because like you say, young families now, when they move somewhere and they're Googling a church, that's the only door they're getting through initially. The question that I have actually comes out of what Susan said just as she took the mic there, with regards to, say, online communion. Where is the line for where church, at what point is virtual church and real church? Where's the line that we just say this far, no further sort of thing?
Mm-hmm. I think what Meg was talking about when she said going to church online, that's boring. That's not the experience we want to have. And where online is, it's the invitation in. It's not where we want to sit and be all the time. It's the invitation to be in community, because that's really what worship and being in community with one another and what we're called to is all about, right? So if we're just sitting at a computer screen, unfortunately it is the reality for some people that that's what they're able to do. Another participant said being, online is better than nothing. If you're in an isolated community and you can't get to church, or maybe you're maybe you got a broken leg and you can't get out to church on Sunday morning, wouldn't it be great if church could still come to you? We have that technology and that possibility, but it's not the hope that in the future church would be online. That's not the experience that we want. We want it to be an extension and an invitation to something bigger.
Thank you.
I realize how long I've been in ministry. When I started in congregational ministry, the media person from my denomination was a man in his 60s who would mail you a 16 millimeter film. And then about halfway through, it was decided that we needed something more than that, so it was made a ministry position within denominational offices, with a man in his late 40s who believed the internet was a fad and had nothing to offer the church. And now we have a man in his 20s who helps congregations build websites. You mentioned the ACC web phenomenon. But taking off from your quotes from Marshall McLuhan. Now, the blessing and curse of McLuhan is that his writing is so dense that he means whatever the person quoting him says he means. But he went beyond the medium as a message. He said the medium is also the massage. And what he meant is that the medium also communicates a message beyond the content that we hope to carry across the medium. So my first question is, did any of your respondents indicate that they ever did any checking with people that they knew had come to the church through its web presence to see what their actual perception of the congregation was?
I don't think any of them asked that. It was always, when they were greeting newcomers at the door, they would say, "How did you find us?" And they would say, "Through your website." I don't know that any of them, it would be interesting for them certainly to take a poll and see for the newcomers that had found the church by the website what the impression was that drew them in the first place. Because when you think about it, there would be tons to choose from. So what is it about this specific one? Another interesting thing that came up was two of the participants said, maybe we shouldn't be putting denominational tags on our website. Is that the thing that drew them into ours? Because one of them doesn't have any denominational tag. It just says the name of the church building, of the church's congregation, but not what type of denomination it is. So would that change things? Were some of the wonderings from participants.
The other is, again, the second quote about being wired in, and where he talked about actually looking to the day when we would actually have a seamless connection between our senses and the wiring of the system that delivered the information to us. But in our context, and particularly the way that so many people have been rewired through the ongoing use of the media, and also, the phenomenon of this being a very individualized experience. Even if I go on to find a church for my family to go to, I have an experience of contact with the congregation that is mine. So, are we at risk then of reaching out to draw people in who come already prepared for the church to be what they want it to be? Not just the church that we communicate without realizing we're communicating it through the massage, but also they come in having made a decision based on what they've seen, a decision that is theirs, that this will somehow meet their needs. Are we setting them up sometimes for disappointment when they come in and discover that they aren't seeing or experiencing what they feel they bought when they checked out the website? What do you think about that?
To me, that's the same as if somebody has chatted up a church word of mouth, This is a great place to go. I've had this amazing experience there. The same person going there might have been set up, or even a movie, Oh, it's the best movie I've seen. Haven't we had that experience and you watch and you're like, like it gets hyped up too much. That can be the same experience. this is, to me, where you need to be very intentional about your online community and that you're being authentic in what you're putting out there. So things like stock images that go up, that's not authentic community. That's not really much to draw you in there. Stuff like that on a website. So I think it's the intentionality of what you put behind that. It would be the same to me as if you're advertising, flyers or whatever, come to check out our congregation. The words that you use, the pictures that you show, the theology that you're presenting, your core beliefs, what you're saying, need to be authentic to the experience that people are going to have when they come there. It's that invitation, but are they, yeah.
I wonder if the difference is that you tell me about your church, and based on your testimony, I say, well, it's worth checking out. Mm-hmm. I go on the web, and I am impressed by what I experience with that connection, even beyond ways that I'm conscious of. And I have already created that church based on its visual presence. So I'm walking then in to check it out with a different set of sort of critical, a different critical stance, a different set of expectations.
Yeah. I agree.
Great presentation, Sarah.
Thank you.
Just like a personal question, like when you start like your ministry out in your own church, would you try the online connections, or would you like just stick with preaching in the church and stuff like that?
Could you maybe say, by online connections, do you mean if I went to a church that didn't have a website?
Would you like try to like
Absolutely.
do a website?
Absolutely, and I was talking a bit about this with my mother, actually. What about those congregations you go to? What if my first pastoral charge was, an aging congregation that didn't really have much connection with online presence? How can we journey together and figure out how to use that technology together and to bring that in? Because, a lot of the lament is, where are the young people? Why aren't there young people? They're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, they're on Instagram. It's a way to connect. So I absolutely think any church that I would go into, I would make sure that there's some kind of online presence, because it's an important piece to me and a tool that I have it's in my toolbox to be able to use that. So, yeah.
Pass that down to Bob, if you will. Thank you.
So I've been thinking about church websites for a long time. I designed the architecture for a couple of them, and including one probably. But I've been wondering a lot about what's next for a church website, because I don't think of it as the front door anymore. I think of it as more like the window display outside a store, but with no windows. So and a series of windows. So how can because people like to reach in and touch and play with stuff, and then maybe I can read a little bit, or I can watch your video, or find something. But I'm wondering now about how can we do like a live operator thing? So maybe volunteers in the church could take turns staffing it in the evenings and be like the weird contact person who can do live dialogue with them. Or maybe chat, or maybe it's like a game right inside the website for kids to play. Or how can we because websites are still very passive. And you're talking about how to draw people to the website. So I'm trying to figure out how to bust it back out to where people will really engage and feel like they want to step over the windowsill and go right into the store.
Well, there's the need to make, we like to go on websites that are interactive. And we like to play games. So, I don't know how many people have a smartphone. I love playing games on my smartphone. Like, what are the ways that we can draw people in using some of those pieces that they're already using? And again, it points to it's something that needs to be done well for it to work. As a couple of the participants pointed out, just simply putting up a podcast of a church service, an entire church service, is not going to cut it. That's not necessarily the interaction that we want, because, as somebody pointed out, it's boring after a while to hear paper shuffling and coughing and not see that experience, the context of the kids running around, or somebody seeing iDog barking in the middle of the service, like those out of context things that you see in person and that engage you, and that tactile experience. I just don't know, I haven't seen it done well enough to see an interactive one done, but...
I don't think I've seen it either.
it's a future possibility. I mean, where are we going next? Now we have this, where do we go next is always the question.
Hospitality online.
Yes. Oh.
Actually, just in line with Rob's comment and the interaction between the two, have you checked out Darkwood Brew? Darkwood Brew. Now, this
No.
is a congregation, I believe, it's in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, that their web presence is a virtual coffee shop, not a virtual church.
Huh. Interesting.
But you interact through podcasts, and then at set times, not broadcast times, a live interaction, which, again, I think reflecting the fact that many people who connect with them don't have high speed, so the video isn't central to it, but you can also relate to it as if you're listening to a radio show, but you can email, tweet, and phone in. And this is a ministry of an emerging church.
Yeah.
I think it's
In Minnesota.
but I believe the name is Darkwood Brew and Darkwood.
Yeah.
And that's the name of the coffee beans that they grind.
Clever. Well, there's certainly talk in some of the participants about email conversations. I mean, that's an interaction there when you're starting a conversation, but what would the difference look like if you actually had a chat board right there? I mean, some of the webinars that we're doing with the United Church right now are very interactive and very well done. And how can that be done? Live streaming on a church website, what are the possibilities for that going down the road? But I think we're headed that way. We just aren't quite there yet.
There are a few features that are known in the States that have live tweet during your sermons.
Yes. Yeah.
And some that ride their motorcycle in to give their sermon on their motorcycles. Anyway.
Weird.
Well, thank you for that, Sarah, and really great implications as we move into the future, great ideas and possibilities. So thank you very much.
Thank you.